So in today's Daily Cyber, I have Tim Medin. He's the principal consultant at Red Siege, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things about penetration testing, kind of the industry, what's going on in cybersecurity. So I'm really excited about this. So let's hack at it. Perfect. So hey, Tim, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. This is an amazing just an opportunity to speak to you because I know you're an expert in the field and you've been in the industry for quite some time. What, it was about 5-10 years or longer?
Yeah, a little bit longer. I mean, I think I've been doing pen testing for about, I should have done the math beforehand. Like that's like the one softball question that I guarantee I'm going to get up front and I never do the math. I think that's about right now. Yeah. But I say a little over a decade, maybe in the pen testing and then IT and some control systems and programming before that.
Awesome. Now, what got you into like cybersecurity pen testing? Like, why didn't you go into compliance, managerial?
Yeah, well, I have my own company now, so they're sort of a little bit managerial, right? But the compliance side, that just wasn't up my alley. I was doing system administration and networking prior to going into to security. And I was like, whoa, this security seems like a fun thing. I didn't know this was really a job. And then I didn't even know that pen testing was a job. I'm like, wait, you can get paid to do things that people get arrested for? I was like, hell yeah, just sign me up. So just kind of decided that's where I was going to make a change and focus on my career on, all things offensive.
Okay. So now before, were you doing more kind of the defensive side, like blue team, as they call them, setting, servers up, routers, switches, kind of the network, the infrastructure, previously, which can you give a little bit more insight?
Yeah. So I was at a financial institution in the northern part of the U.S., in the Midwest, and I was hired as a network and systems engineer. So okay. I was administering the systems, doing the networking gear, Cisco kind of stuff. Frankly, I love networking. The soul-sucking piece with networking is troubleshooting latency problems. It makes you want to jump off a bridge, right? And then that of course, you get phone calls at 3 a.m. because some system went offline. It never happened, about 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's always, Friday night at 2 a.m. or something like that. No, but seriously, that was my background, and I was interested in security. They were having a number of initiatives surrounding that. I'm like, you know what, this is something I'm interested in. So I ended up picking up a lot of the sort of internal security related projects and just took them on. I'm like, hey, can I do that one? Can I do that one? Can I do that one? And then spent a bunch of time myself reading and blogging and learning about security, and then sort of pivoted my role internally from the networking and system administration into security. And then from there, moved on to consultancy doing pen testing.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's actually pretty cool. Because, you hear it time and time again now. I'm sure you get this too. There's a lot of people transitioning from whatever job that may be. Some people even outside of IT are transitioning, going to cybersecurity. And a lot of people are looking at pen testing because I think it's the hottest thing in the market in the sense of marketing. And you see it like on conferences. Everyone's talking about pen testing, vulnerability assessments and pen testing. So it's interesting to hear, from your perspective, how you change and transition from being kind of on the IT blue team side, configuring, setting things up, and then transitioning over to the red team kind of pen testing.
Yeah, and it really helps to have that background. If you can understand how to configure some of those systems, you can understand a little bit how to sort of use and abuse and break those systems. One piece that I find tremendously valuable is I was a network engineer, right? So I did a bunch of Cisco networking routers, switches. So if on a pen test or a red team, we have access to the networking gear, I can do a lot of fun things in there. Right. I sort of liken it, not to sort of get egomaniacal or anything crazy, but like getting into the matrix itself. Right. Because, on your typical environment, you've got the network is defined by the network admins. Right. And the network is sort of like a series of roads. And the roads are defined by them. And to get from point A to point B, you have to take the roads as defined by the network admins.
Mm-hmm.
When you can get into the networking gear, you can sort of make your own roads, if you will. And now you can start bypassing some of the defensive technologies. So maybe bypass the IPS or IDS or firewall or whatever it might be, and become a little bit quieter. You can also there's really cool things you can use to use the networking gear itself kind of as a pivot, a way to get deeper into the network that isn't typically logged the same way as Windows hosts are.
Okay.
So, kind of fun stuff.
So yeah, as you're going through, I mean, I'm sure as a pen tester, and let's talk about like, what is pen testing? If we're going to define it, if you were going to say, okay, pen testing is this, what would that be?
Yeah. So the sort of simple thing that I got this from Ed Scotus from a class many moons ago. But the goal of a pen tester is to model a real world attacker with sort of the goal of what that would attacker have to demonstrate the business risk, right?
Okay.
The key here is to model the real world bad guy. Real world bad guys are going to take systems offline if need be. At no point in time am I going to intentionally take down a system without some sort of approval. And frankly, I'll probably never get that kind of an approval, right? A real world bad guy would happily ransomware your entire everything.
Right.
I, of course, can never do that, right? So there's this modeling aspect. Also, as part of that, kind of an efficiency gain, we're going to talk to the teams inside to make this go a little bit faster. Because your real bad guy might spend weeks, months, frankly years trying to get into these networks, and realistically, people aren't going to write a contract for that, right? So we have to have some efficiency gains as kind of a trade-off here to find those vulnerabilities. Ultimately, ideally, before the bad guys do.
Okay.
And of course, the key is always, how do these vulnerabilities relate to the business? Because these vulnerabilities don't exist in a vacuum, right? We've got to tie it back to the business. Why do I care about this vulnerability and patching it? Well, it's because it allows access to your sensitive information, right? Your secret formula for Coke, or your credit card numbers or healthcare information, whatever your organization does. If we can frame those vulnerabilities around that data, it helps us understand the true risk of that vulnerability. Whereas with a VA, I mean, you can get some of this picture as well, because if you find a vulnerability, VA meaning vulnerability assessment, if we find a vulnerability on some sort of critical system, you can kind of tie that together. But one of the things we do with pen testing is we put multiple pieces together, right? So I'm going to take maybe vulnerability A, combine it with B and C, to develop some sort of exploit or lateral movement technique or whatever it may be, to put a little bit more of the, quote, proof in the pudding, if you will.
Yeah, and the way I was explaining the difference between VA and pen testing, you can confirm that this is correct, is basically a VA is just a scan to see what vulnerabilities are out there, but the actual pen test is to actually see if they're real world active, in the sense of, you see a port that's open when you're doing a vulnerability scan. But is it really open, and is it really vulnerable that you can actually get access to it and gain access through the pen test? So that's kind of the way I was explaining kind of the difference is you got to report a vulnerability assessment that you run, some sort of scan, whatever that means, whatever tool you're using, and it gives you a report and tells you what's potentially open. But the pen test is actually to show that you can actually breach that and get access.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add even more, because the VA, the vulnerability assessment, you're not going to be firing off the traditional sort of exploits. Now, frankly, we don't see the traditional exploits in quantity like we used to. But with your VA, you're not going to be firing those. You're going to say, look, this looks like it is. We have a specific confidence level that this is indeed vulnerable. Whereas with pen testing, you're going to fire those exploits. Of course, we're going to do it in a controlled fashion. If there's a chance the system might go offline, we'll do it during a maintenance window or talk to the people. The other big difference with the VA versus pen test is a vulnerability assessment is going to look kind of at the surface, right? We get the scanner is touching a lot of systems and a lot of ports and a lot of services, but it's not looking necessarily beneath that, right? With a pen test, you get access to a system, and now maybe we find passwords.txt in the desktop. Cool. Now we use that to get access to the next system, and that gives me authenticated access. And now we see a configuration issue that maybe your vulnerability scanner doesn't identify. So we put these pieces together. I sort of jokingly refer to that sort of pen test where you do exploitation, but you don't do anything. We kind of jokingly refer to that as the RCPT, the really crappy pen test.
Okay.
Because all you're doing is getting a vulnerability assessment with some additional sort of checks. It's like a validated pen test. And frankly, those are crap.
Okay.
Right? Because if you're paying somebody, you may as well pay somebody to put the pieces together as well, instead of just kind of find the pieces. Right? If I can use A, B, and C together and pivot to get into system D, perfect. That's what I want to see. I don't want to just have a vulnerability assessment where we do quote unquote exploitation, but really it's just a crappy VA. And unfortunately, we see a lot of that where the kind of the industry term is the pen test puppy mills, where you crank them out as fast as you can. Don't do some of those extra sort of, checks, right? You get access to the system. What can you do next? That pivot is important. If your pen testers are not pivoting, meaning getting access to one system and using that system to access another, frankly, fire them and just get a VA because it's a lot cheaper.
Right. And I think one of the things that I want to, establish here and people that are coming up in the pen testing world is you have to have that engagement first. You have to have that contract. You have to have the scope of your pen test before you just jump in and start doing a penetration test. You need to have that, because if you don't, they might have critical systems. They might have, systems that might be a little bit on the iffy side. If you do too much or throw too much traffic, it could take it down, and it could be a critical system. So like you're saying, you do the engagement, right, and do the scope and see exactly what needs to be pen test.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, kind of going more into that scope and the agreement. I mean, frankly, the only difference between the good guys and the bad guys, it's not intent. It is solely permission. Right. It's, I mean, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act says unauthorized access to a computer system. The key there is that unauthorized, right? And of course, once you get into the test, you try to be as careful as you can, because you don't want to intentionally take down systems. Invariably, it'll happen to everybody. Something goes offline, something goes down. I mean, these systems crash on their own, right? And sometimes it's like, did I do it? Did the system crash on its own? Was it somebody else? It's hard to trace that back. Now, that's extremely rare, but, things crash on their own, right? And you can't guarantee 100% chance of it staying up, because you frankly can't guarantee 100% chance of when you're just running your network, right? Servers just randomly go offline because they feel like it. Who knows, right?
Oh, for sure. And anything can happen, right? You never know. And and I just want to put that caveat, because I know there's some guys that have, they're excited, they're eager. I can go pen test this company. There's bounties and things like that. You can talk about a little bit. Is that people go and do these bounties and thinking that, they can just go do them. But there's actually, these policies, procedures, there's these scopes that you need to look at before you even do that. And there's, this criteria that you have to either, watch out, and requirements you have to meet. So pen testing is not just you learn how to compromise a system and go. There's a lot more deeper kind of professionalism behind it. Like you said, then you're actually a hacker breaking down in a system versus actually being someone that's helping the company.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more on all of that. Absolutely.
Right. So let's talk about that in the sense of when pen testing, one of the things that people ask me about is kind of, the different areas. There's white hat pen testers, and there's gray hat, and there's black hat. Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, I mean, the difference between the black and the white is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, so the terms come from the old like Westerns. Mm-hmm. Black and white Westerns, you didn't have a lot of colors, and the bad guy always wore the black hat and the good guy always wore the white hat, because, that's just what they did, right? And that's where those terms come from. The white hat's the good guy, the black hat's the bad guy.
Okay.
The gray hat, I mean, that's where you get a little bit of both. And of course, there's kind of a spectrum in there of the gray, where, I mean, I know plenty of people who are on the good side who cut their chops doing things that were less than legal.
Right.
Or, I mean, we see it all the time where we've got some of the good guys and they'll keep up their skills or practice by doing things that are a little bit or a lot of it, frankly, illegal.
Right.
And then there's a whole sort of series in the middle where you sort of, there's this whole ethical discussion, like, hey, is this actually legal or not? And, even if it isn't, is it the right thing to do? Right. I mean, it comes down to the permission thing. So it gets into this long sort of discussion once you get into the gray. But the key here is if you want to stay above board, and frankly, I like staying out of jail and I don't like lawsuits.
Right.
So always get that permission. Right.
Yeah.
It's really easy. If you want to practice on your own, set up your own lab. You can get free copies of Windows legitimately. Download Windows 10, the eval mode. Tons of different versions of Linux. There's a lot of free software out there with known vulnerabilities that you can play with and research.
Right.
So you don't have to go do anything sort of illegal.
Right. And I think one of the things that I was advised of, there's a lot of sites out there that you can go to as well, where they have, you can do capture the flag and you can kind of do all these different tests. Right. And you can build up your strength and you can do all that in a controlled environment. And then, like you said, you can get like some sort of like VMware or anything online and set up your own little mini network in your own environment and then go nuts. Right. And not, violate anything because you're doing testing internally for your education, your knowledge. You're not compromising the actual company, but you're doing this locally. And if it's an application or if it's an operating system, you can do that for, testing purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty of them, the free ones out there. I mean, there's off the top of my head, there's Hack in the Box. I mean, it's relatively cheap. There's Sans Net Wars. It's going to be a little bit pricier, but the nice thing is it gives you kind of an enterprise environment. There's tons of blog write-ups. There's a lot of free CTFs that people write. There's write-ups on those CTFs. If you go to something like ctftime.org, you can find those CTFs. You can also see how other people solve some of those challenges and figure it out yourself, or maybe kind of walk through or try it yourself. And then when you're stuck, go through the walkthrough. So there's a lot of resources out there for you to learn, of course, to stay on the stay above board, if you will.
Right. Now, in the area of pen testing, there's so many different facets to it. I mean, breaching servers, network, like you talked about, mobile devices, websites, applications, programs, Internet of Things devices. Is there one area would you say focus on everything and try to learn everything, or would you say focus on one area and become an expert in that area?
Yeah, that's the question I get all the time. People ask, like, hey, which one should I do? And my sort of snippy but super truthful and I guess semi-deeper response is pick the one that you like, right? There's no reason for you to get into web pen testing if you don't like it, because you're going to hate it. You're going to regret that decision and you're going to switch to something else anyway. Find the piece that you like. If you're interested in the web, cool. There's lots of free resources out there for web. Network pen testing, you're going to have to build a decent sized lab and play with. What you sort of, at least in my experience and experience with some of the people that I know, is once you get good at one area, it'll sort of naturally bleed into work in another. So you'll start doing the let's say network pen testing, and you're going to see some web applications, and you're going to start maybe developing your skills in that area. And some of the same concepts are going to apply there. And then once you have maybe the web, then you start looking at mobile. Well, most mobile applications are just crappy browsers, so it's just web with a different front end. Right. And you just move from the next to the next. And once you get, let's say, good at, the network pen testing, you get a Linux machines and you learn a lot about Linux. Cool. A lot of IoT devices are built on Linux. Now you can jump into some of the IoT type of hacking. So it'll sort of, the skill set will sort of develop itself for you, kind of, if you stay interested and stay engaged and stay on top of it. But frankly, the short answer is just pick the piece you're interested in.
Now, wouldn't it help also, again, pick the piece that you have a little bit of knowledge and background in and an interest? For example, like I'll use web, the web. If you're interested in HTML, CSS, PHP, Java, you have an interest, you've been working with them for a little bit, if you wanted to go into penetration testing, it'd be better to go into that first and then build your skill sets versus trying to go into something completely different like network security, right? And pen test that if you have no network security knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. And it's I find the some of the best, pen testers are former network admins or the best, web testers are former developers because they have all of the concepts. They've got a lot of those fundamentals and they're just taking those fundamentals and they're flipping them on their head, right? Like They know how to configure the thing. So they know how to break it and they know what's wrong, what not to do because maybe they've done it before or maybe they have a background on that documentation or that product or the tool or the software or whatever it might be. So if you've got that, leverage the crap out of it. I had a friend of mine who used to do a bunch of mainframe type work. And he's turned that into security consulting, and he is doing really well.
Right.
But he's got that fundamentals, and that's not a skill set where I'm gonna be like, you know what? Let me go out and learn mainframes because I don't want to hack it. I'm not going to develop that skill set without completely changing my career because I just don't have access to that. Now that's a little bit more specific, but it could apply very similarly maybe to hardware hacking as well.
For sure. I mean, and that was the kind of the point I think I want to hit across is that when people are asking and listening to this podcast, is like, where do I need to go or where should I go? It's one of those things, like you said, go into an area that you're interested in, go into an area that you have a little bit of knowledge and experience in, and then start working from there. And especially when we're talking about pen testing, right, in this area. And I think it helps to have that because, like you said, if you've configured it, you kind of know where the vulnerabilities are. You know where the admin files and everything's stored. You know where the configuration files and this is stored. Like I know for websites, for me, you know where the user files are stored. You know where, potentially you can get into the back end through different, open doors and things like that. You know where, there's a potential vulnerability. It's because you set it up. You configure, you understand that. So same thing with networks, as you know, there's certain ports that some people just don't configure because it's not, closed by default. So those are probably the ports, you first check, right? I know a colleague of mine, when he was doing pen testing, he did SQL Server setups and configurations in Active Directory. And he said a lot of times you would just try to, break into the SQL Server and he would just try to admin because that was the default password for SQL when it was installed. And sure enough, a good percentage of the time he would be able to get in because they never reset it.
Yep.
So like I said, it's things like that, like you're talking about, which I totally agree. And, people listening to this, I want you to kind of think about that as you're going through your pen testing, journey and you're interested in that. Here's some kind of good tips.
Yeah. Well, and to sort of add to that as well, a lot of people that don't have the experience in pen testing, offense, hacking, red team, whatever you want to call the flavor of the day there. It's not like it is on TV, right? It's not Tom Cruise and the beautiful woman in that building, and he takes it out to the fat guy in the van, and I'm the fat guy in the van, right? And he gets it in a minute or two and sends it back. It's a lot of reading through documentation. It's a lot of learning about these tools, and it's not flashy. Like I've had friends like, "Hey, can I come watch you hack?" And I'm like, "You will be bored out of your mind."
Right.
Like I'll have some music on the background. I'm going to have 3 screens open. I'm going to flip it back and forth. And I'm going to have Microsoft Word open because I'm writing a report at the same time. And they're like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, well, what do you think is actually happening? It's not like a movie. Another thing too, if you're getting into pen testing, is this is a line of work that's kind of unique in that there's a lot of failure. I mean, the whole goal is we are trying a lot of different things to see what ultimately works, and a lot of those things won't work. And I sort of joke, but it's mostly just true. I'm not that good of a hacker. I just know how to fail fast.
Right.
So I can try a lot of the things really quickly and then get to the things that are going to cause the success. And then, of course, you want to develop your skill set so you know more things that you could possibly try to get to those successes. But it's very true in our industry. The success and failure are not opposites. They are the same thing. You've got to have those failures to get to the successes. And if you're not able to tolerate those failures, this is not the line of work for you, right? Like, I mean,
so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that actually. Like, you're talking about failures. Give me some examples of those failures, because I think, like you said, so many people think it's like you type in this code, you run this script, and all of a sudden you're into the network, and then you've got the gold, the root password, because you just did this one code. But that's, like you said, that's not reality.
Yeah. I mean, there's, a target might have hundreds, thousands of systems online, and only a couple might give you access. And you're going to have to poke around maybe on all of those to finally figure that out. Right? You're going to go to this one website and you have no idea what's going to get you access. A few years ago, we did at an event, we did like a hacking IoT night.
Okay.
And what we did is we went to Amazon and spent a few $100s, bought some devices and brought them in and told people to just start hacking them.
Okay.
And we explained people on some of the basic concepts. And frankly, we had no idea because they were brand new devices that we had never seen before. And then at the end of the night, we had a bunch of people come up to us like, well, what were the answers? Like, well, I don't know.
You don't know.
Right? Like, we haven't done this before. It's brand new. It's like, oh, well, I want the answers. Like, well, what did you try? Well, nothing, because I didn't know what was going to work. Like, well, that doesn't work in this industry. Right. You have to try, and you're going to fail a lot. Right? How many different passwords are you going to try to get into that admin system when the password isn't admin? Right? Is it some sort of crappy password that you just happen to not try? Or is it a good password that you're never going to guess? Right? And you don't know. Right? And it's going to happen over and over and over again.
Right. And I think that's a good explanation, because I like to give people the idea that cybersecurity is not an easy field. Penetration is not an easy, career to be in. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of training and education and ongoing on the fly research. And then it's long hours, like in the sense that, like you said, and I've worked with some guys that are pen testers, and they spend maybe 10, 12 hours on one thing, just trying to breach it. All these different scenarios, all these different tries, all different ways and different scripts and different access points. And they're just trying to potentially, hopefully they can get in. And that's one, like in the analogy of the capture the flag, that's one flag. But now they have to go into the next level, and then the next level and the next level. Like these guys would, leave files behind just to show that they've been able to get access to certain areas, just to show when they write the reports, and then, work with the clients to be able to say, look, we breached this access point. We got in here, we got to the file server, and we left one of our files there. Here's an image file that we left, just to show that we were able to get all the way through the security. But that took like 3-4 days of engagement. It wasn't just something like you see in the movies where, like you said with Tom Cruise, all of a sudden they're into the main server, they're in there, and it's like, 30 seconds to a minute they're in. These guys are spending days just to get into this one point, and then next days, and then, like you said, then writing a report, taking screen captures, doing all that to show what exactly did, so that happens when they go back to the client, here's what you need to fix.
Yeah, and to add to that too, I mean, oftentimes you have multiple people working on this together, so it's even more like, I know so much, and then fortunately I work with some people who are smarter than me, but like Mike and Corey, for example, they know different things that I don't know, and we share and we bounce those ideas off of each other, and then we sort of use it like a ratchet, right? Like get a little bit of pressure, put a little bit more pressure, and then eventually, ideally, from our perspective, of course, something we get in, and we can go from there. Now, I sort of say that, and I kind of hate to do that because I flinch when I say it, and I don't use the word win from our perspective, at least in a forum like this. We use it sort of internally, but the goal here is I mean, while it is ultimately for us to get in a way, the goal is to identify the vulnerabilities that could have an impact to our clients before the bad guys do. Right. And our goal to sort of help do that is to get in as far as we can. And but I don't want to say that as a win because it means that the other team is sort of lost, right? We're in this together, and it's unfortunate because there's so many places where they look at the red and the blue team, the offense and the defense, as adversaries.
Right.
But realistically, we're on the same side. We're both working against the real bad guys who are going to steal your data, ransomware you, whatever it might be.
Right.
We're not adversaries. We shouldn't be fighting. We should be working together as collaboratively as possible.
So let's talk about that. And you bring that up. Isn't that where now the purple team engagement came up? Right. Because you did have the red team and you had the blue team, and, you know, I wouldn't say, I don't even know when purple team came out, the kind of the analogy of that workflow, but you had that for quite some time where there's a blue team would set something up and the red team would try to compromise it, and you kind of go back and forth. But over the last, what was it, a year, 2 years, now there's this purple team engagement, which from my understanding, and I love to hear your insight, is now more live engagement with the pen testers and the blue team to figure things out on the fly.
Yeah. So, and that's it's actually a beautiful evolution. I think it's kind of a logical evolution. So kind of going back a little bit, I mean, we used to have a lot of just pen tests where you get in and you sort of shred the company, if you will, and then drop off the report on your way out, and maybe have a phone call, kind of a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And then the blue team gets it. And we were, you know, frankly, I was at one point, I think I matured out of it relatively quickly, but you know, you get in, it's exciting, and I wasn't going to, I mean, I didn't rub it in anybody's faces,
right?
But that was sort of the attitude on the pen testers was, we're kind of going to rub it in your face a little bit. And that's not constructive, right? Because if we look at it, the red and the blue, the offense and the defense, are ultimately trying to make the defenses better so we keep the real bad guys out.
Right.
And so we'd see, you know, these fantastic reports, someone lobs it over to the other side, and that's it. And the blue team is just sort of left like, okay, cool, now what? And that sort of naturally evolved into the purple team, where we'll have the two sides, that offense and the defense, sit down together, and it could be as collaborative as, okay, I'm going to launch this right now. Can you see it?
Right.
Can you see it? Do you have automation surrounding that to escalate that properly? And do you have coverage throughout your organization? And if you've got that, the big focus traditionally has been around prevention.
Right.
We know now, of course, prevention is not 100%. We've got to have some focus on detection.
Right.
There will be bypasses to whatever defensive technologies you have. There will be O days. There will be some way that a bad guy is going to get in, and you have to be able to detect the bad guy and get them the heck out of your organization, ideally as quickly as possible.
Now, you
mentioned
go ahead. You mentioned O days. You mentioned O days. So what is that?
Yeah, so the 0 day is the number of days since the exploit has come out. We use that as a term for there's no patch for it yet. Mm-hmm. And we kind of use that term too for, you know, a new bug where the patches maybe aren't widespread yet either.
Okay.
But it's, hey, we have no defense in place for this yet. No patch for Windows or Linux or whatever the heck it might be. And then the bad guys can sort of rip to the network. So we need that defense in depth so that if our first line, our patching, fails, we have other ways to either stop or detect the bad guy inside of our network.
Now, let's talk about patch management. Again, being on a pen testing and kind of the red team and looking at that, are you finding that there's a challenge with companies from when vulnerabilities out there? You know, you're getting the manufacturers now writing patches to it, but when they get to the patches get deployed, is there this gap? Is this 3 week, 6 months, whatever gap, that now they're still vulnerable, even though that the fix is out there, but there's still this window that there's a gap in companies going through change management, deploying the patches to make sure they're up to the newest, greatest kind of, patch and security patch that there should be out there? Are you finding there's a challenge? This is a challenge?
And there's multiple pieces to that, right? Like, so the patch comes out, it just frankly takes time to deploy it. And we've been in situations where, new bug comes out and we're on site that week and we of course use it, right? And we show, hey, look, we need the defense in depth in order to prevent this kind of an issue.
Right.
Other times, it's been, weeks, months, maybe years later where, you're kind of in that window where some of the stuff should have been patched. But there's oftentimes systems where you're like, you know what, this one is too critical. We cannot patch this system.
Right.
Or it's a vendor product that happens to use Windows or Linux or whatever it might be, and we can't patch it without going out of support. Or commonly, unfortunately, is don't have the proper asset management and they don't know the system exists, which means, of course, it gets no patches and there is no visibility. There is no monitoring. So you can use that as a beachhead inside the organization. So that's a whole giant thing. I mean, if you look at the critical controls, your hardware and software inventory, if I remember correctly, are like 1 and 2 on the critical controls.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what software and hardware is in your network so that you can keep up to date with it, right?
For
and
sure.
The software piece is even worse than that because there's layers.
Mm-hmm.
So I might have, this Linux server. On this Linux server, I'm running Apache. On Apache, I'm running PHP. Within PHP, I'm loading additional modules. And it means, frankly, all of that, right? It's not as simple as just Linux. It's not as simple as just the web server. There's multiple tiers here. I mean, it could even be the CMS that's built on top of PHP as well, right? And there's different plugins inside of that. So it sort of turtles all the way down, and getting a good software inventory can oftentimes be deceptively difficult.
Right. And I mean, there's a lot of tools out there. And people that are listening, there's a lot of tools out there that can help you and assist you to do that inventory. But like you said, this is a huge issue, is that asset management and patch management to make sure that you're up to date. Because I heard on the other side of the fence that, like hackers, they love this, is because what happens is they don't have to do the research. It's literally out there. This is a vulnerability. And if you use this, these 3 steps or this way, you can get into these systems, and they know there's a window, right? There's a window where they can compromise a company, because they potentially have run that. Maybe they've done some reconnaissance. They understand the company's running one of these servers or, applications. And sure enough, they know that vulnerability is there, and they have a window that they can get in using that, compromise, because they know it's out there. And it's kind of one of those things where I think it's a hard thing for the blue team, because like you said, there's so many, policies, procedures, change management, testing, everything they have to go through, where hackers don't have to do that. It's literally, hey, there's an open hole, I can get in, go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and one of the sort of big ones that we like to bring up, not to throw anybody under the bus, but like the Equifax breach, there was a vulnerability with a software tool, a package called Apache Struts.
Right.
And the vulnerability was released earlier in the year. They were compromised months later, and the detection was made even months after that. And the hard part is you can't exactly just do a regular old scan for that. It's not like trying to find the Linux systems in your environment. Because this is going to be compiled into your custom Java, and you have to be able to look at that differently to properly identify. So, I mean, getting the vulnerability management program right and getting that software inventory is kind of difficult.
So now, one of the things I watched was a documentary on Ashley Madison, right? And that breach, where they actually had a report from someone in the Philippines that, did a test, found the vulnerability, gave them a test, like the actual report saying, hey, you know what, you're vulnerable here. And it took some time for them to even action, because they didn't think it was a big deal. Don't worry about it. And then eventually that was one of the bigger breaches at that time. I think it was, back in 2015. And a lot of people got compromised because a lot of celebrities and politicians and professionals were using that site. But what happened is that they had a vulnerability and they knew about it, right? And they knew, that there was a potential. And it's no different from, 0 days and things like that. When the patch comes out in the security, they know about it. It's now up to the company now, in my opinion, is to take the process to be able to implement that. And if they don't, then there's negligence there if they let it go too long.
Yeah, that's always so tough because you're gonna have it at some organizations at some point. There's going to be systems and things that you can't patch or you have to defer, and defining that risk is incredibly difficult, right? And getting that right, and it's a little bit easier to play the armchair quarterback. There's a lot of these where you're like, that frankly, that was just stupid. But it can be hard. I mean, the simple math is like, what's the likelihood of the impact? Multiply that times the impact, the potential impact. Now that's easy to say, but how do you define likelihood of impact? And that's everyone's going to have a little bit of a different sort of idea there. But at some point, I've seen some organizations where, the head of one BU, one business unit is patching like crazy. And another business unit, they're just signing the box for accept the risk and accept the risk and accept the risk.
Right.
And, I think maybe, and I've seen some organizations where frankly, and I hate to say it, but maybe they're patching too much.
Right.
Or spending too much on security. And people are probably going to, be furious at that. But I mean, it comes down to, we should only spend so much on security because the security doesn't make the business work, right? It's a cost center. And getting that cost right is hard. Now, what the bigger point there is, there's a lot of organizations that spend minimal. And that's, I think, the significantly greater risk isn't overspending, it's underspending and exposing yourself, your clients, your brand. I mean, we've seen multiple times where companies have been breached, and that brand hit is incredibly painful. Right. We're seeing the fines associated with that just flying through the roof. Now, of course, we've seen plenty of times where it has had hardly any impact. We've seen some major retailers get breached, especially that before the big fines, where their stock price took a dip for a little bit and came right back, and it wasn't actually too bad for them.
But I think right now, like when you're talking about, and here, I kind of sit on the fence that you got to look at in the sense when people are spending money on cybersecurity, can you spend too much? I think the challenge comes down is you don't know the impact during the actual breach or after, which you brought up, because I was having a conversation today and we were talking about, your brand and potential loss of revenue after the fact for retailers, people that have customers. Now the trust is gone, right? The trust to shop with that company, to be able to procure anything from them, because you don't trust that if you're shopping online, which a lot of companies now are going towards. You have to put your credit card information. You do that. Are you going to get compromised because you put your information in? So now people stop shopping with that, company X, right? And stop buying products because they don't trust that they're going to secure their information. And that dip could be a week, could be a month, could be even a quarter. We don't know that impact, but the amount of money they can lose in that time, not just from the breach alone, but the aftermath of that. And I think that's where we don't know how much money you should spend on security for that impact, because you don't know the effects after. Some people, like you said, can be minimal. It's a minimal impact after a short, span, and they're back up and going, and then the trust is back there, and or it could be ones where people don't trust them for quite some time, and the company has to now do a PR campaign to show that they've done their due diligence, their security. Now they're more secure. They put technology in place to make sure that everything's secure. Now you can trust them. So I think it's kind of one of those things that when it comes to like us in security, it's kind of a fine line of looking at, transference and, or even delegating out that, it's not that bad right now. The impact, what's the likelihood or chance that that's going to be compromised?
Right. Yeah. I completely agree with you. I mean, that sort of leading in my previous comments, leading into the discussion that you're talking about. I mean, it comes up down to ultimately budgeting, right? Can you get the budgeting to pull it off? And
right.
I think there's many more organizations who are underfunded in security than those who are overfunded.
Right.
Right. And there's sort of statistics, and I don't remember them off the top of my head, on the average spending in security and the suggested spending rate for security. But yeah, I mean, we still see in this day and age, even now, in 2020, we've had pen testing and security around for a while, and we get some, and they're relatively new to the entire concept. Whereas we've got others who we sort of refer to them as apex defenders who are doing things right. I mean, they're making our life hard and they're making us cry, which is great, right? Because that's ultimately the goal. And there's things that even then you can learn. One of my colleagues, Mike, wrote a blog post. I forget something about the benefits of getting your teeth kicked in.
Right. Okay.
There's still we don't have to have that quote unquote traditional win. There are still interesting ways to quote unquote win without getting that sort of full domain compromised. There's always going to be some sort of leak or something like that. I think in that blog post, for example, we had a horrible time trying to pivot. Could get on other systems, but it was a financial institution, and there were essentially checks all over the place, just in the file shares, which means bank accounts and routing numbers.
Wow.
And other financial information. It wasn't everything that was sensitive to them, but as a bad guy, I mean, how many big accounts do you actually need access to have a good life, right? I mean, we've got these multi-billion, multi-trillion-dollar companies. I would be perfectly happy with a couple of $1 million on an island.
Right. True. So now let's kind of talk about like the gap here. Like, we're talking about like cybersecurity. We're talking about like, people setting up, budgets and things like that. But are you seeing a gap in the industry? Like we all hear about, there's a shortage of IT professionals, IT security professionals, and there's a shortage of, people that have the expertise. Are you seeing that as you're going your day to day and working with, these different companies?
The hard part is there is definitely a shortage of like the senior level people.
Okay.
I mean, and I think, that you're probably going to have that in a lot of industries, frankly, right? The hard part is training those sort of junior people up to get them into that senior position. I don't have a great answer for that, but I know a lot of the line of work I'm in is, the pen test side. I know a lot of companies are trying to find good people, and it's hard. And we're frankly snatching them up as fast as we can, even before we necessarily need them, because there aren't a ton of those senior level people. Right. There are a good number of the junior and some of the mid-level people out there, but getting that is hard. And a lot of organizations aren't ready to, we're a small company. At this point, I can't necessarily take a junior person and grow them into that senior person. I hope we will grow to that point where we can do that, but we just simply sort of can't. So long story short is, yes, I think there is a sort of skills shortage for some of those top people.
Okay. Yeah, because I was talking to a recruiter today, just kind of following up on just the industry and what's going on. And they're saying it's kind of across the board from junior level positions. And I mean, junior in the sense of 1 to 2 years experience, not someone that, hey, I'm in this other career and now I want to be in cybersecurity, but people that have at least 2 years of experience up to, like you said, senior level people, because what they're saying is that there's 2 areas of challenges for them is one, finding those good people. And then second is retaining them in these companies because they get the experience, they get the knowledge, and they move on to the next opportunity. Either 1 or 2 areas is one, they want the challenge because it's new information, new technologies, be it along that line, or 2, it's the money, right? The company can't pay for their education, can't pay the salary that they're, potentially worth at that time because they've got good skill set. And now they move on to the next company, which pays a little bit more. And they just keep moving up and moving to different positions and moving on. So
yeah, it's funny because I've read some articles about that, like how do you retain? Because I work with some super smart people, and I definitely want to keep them, right? Because that's the thing. It means you get those big pay increases. Most people, have to go someplace else,
right?
And then the irony is, when you then backfill the position, you end up oftentimes bumping up the pay anyhow. So it's like, well, why not just keep the person you have? And it takes a while for that person to get up to speed and get used to the policies and the procedures and the culture.
Right.
I don't have a great answer for that, but that is absolutely true. And then, of course, there's the piece with the training. Training's expensive, and people don't want to spend on the training, but that's a nice perk. And of course, there's that age-old saying, "Hey, what happens if we train them and they leave?" And of course, the counterpoint is, "What happens if we don't train them and they stay?" Right? I mean, you just got to look at it as
the other side
business, but
the other side is, sorry for cutting you off there, but the other side is, what if you don't train them and they leave, right? Right, they leave to another company that does do training. Like I've heard, you're in this new company and they're great and they don't do training, so you get your 1-2 year experience and you jump to another company, which is a bigger company now, and they do have in-house training. So now you kind of have the best of both worlds, right? So you can't, as a manager, it's a really hard position to be in, right? Because like you said, you don't want to, spend that money, your budget, on getting someone up to speed, getting them the policies and procedures, making sure they understand the environment, get them, the education that they need, and then they leave now. And then you have to reinvest in the next person, right? So it's a hard position to be in. That's why I was asking about the shortage, because I think the one thing that my grandparents, ran into is you get a job and you stick with it for life. If you get like a postal job or a government job, or, you work for the big companies, that's it. You start when you're young and then you go and you retire. And I think we've kind of, in a whole, I think we've kind of lost that value as employees, but also the companies are having a hard time to do that as well. So I think this is kind of this balance that we have to figure out, because it's, I know a lot of great companies that, want to retain good people. They have good, practices, good employment. They rank really high when it comes to employment and the other staff. But when it's IT, specifically security, they just can't retain them and they said for some reason. And and from what I'm hearing it's just because these guys go there, get the training, get the experience, and then move on to whatever that next thing is. If it's, if they focus on network, then the next thing they jump to is cloud. And then the next thing they're jumping to is something, Internet of Things, is because the guys are just interested in all these different things and want to try all these things, and they have the ability to do that. So I think that's one thing that as IT security professionals, we kind of have to look at ourselves is, where do we want to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Now I have a question for you. Like, since you've been in the industry for 10 years, all your experience, what challenges are you seeing? Like in 2020, start of the new year, what challenge are you seeing in the cybersecurity industry?
So I think a couple pieces. I mean, I think we're finally sort of learning that a purple or purplish approach is the right way to go. I mean, and you're probably like, well, duh, Tim, because there's just so much. And what's funny is I hear people ask about the purple team, but then when you say that, hey, let's do this, they don't actually sort of want it. They like some of the terms. Okay. So I've had organizations say, hey, we want to do a purple team. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean to you? Because it's sort of a newish term in our industry. So people end up misusing it a little bit, right? Like everyone understands vulnerability management, vulnerability assessment, because it's been around for a long time. And people hear people say, like, we want a pen test, but can we have a meeting afterwards? I'm like, well, I wouldn't call that purple. But if that's what you need, that's okay, right? But we need to close that feedback loop. And I think the additional focus on some of the detection capabilities of defenders instead of just preventative measures is one of those key pieces.
Right.
I think another piece too is the internal pen test, I think, is a little bit outdated in the way that we currently do it. So what we see oftentimes is you throw a Linux box on the network and you start, trying to break into systems. That's not the way the bad guys are getting in. They are not coming into your facility, plugging in a laptop and hacking the systems. Realistically, the way they're getting in is with a phish. The vast majority. I mean, I asked my forensics and IR people that I know, like, hey, what's the math on this? Or like, it's phishing. Well,
okay, so
what's the percentage? Like, it's phishing, no question. Yeah.
So phishing. What's phishing, and kind of what are some scenarios of phishing?
Yeah, so there's multiple different ways to phish, right? The ultimate goal here is to social engineer, to convince some end user to take some sort of action that compromises their system. It traditionally is either clicking on a link or opening a document that has a file format that causes the program to run the arbitrary code, to run the code of the attacker so they can get remote access. We see other phishing techniques where we're asking the user for credentials and then using those credentials to maybe log into a VPN or some sort of website that's publicly available, and then use that. But with that, going back to that internal pen test, the bad guy isn't jumping on the network and then looking around for a bunch of sort of open services. It used to be like, a decade ago, we would see something like MS 08 067. It's a big vulnerability from 2008 that was just all over the network, and you would just do a memory corruption type exploit, take over a whole pile of systems.
Okay.
But that's not the way that the bad guys are getting in, and frankly, we're patching quicker and we're firewalling off. So even if those vulnerabilities exist, it's far less common.
Okay.
And I think the assumed breach, where you start with access on a system and begin your pen test from there, is a better representation of what's happening in the real world.
Okay.
It's also sort of a more efficient way to do a red team. So the red team versus the pen test, week or two, we're going to be loud. We don't necessarily care about being super quiet on the network. Whereas red team, you're going to be testing the defenders. I sort of simplify it, maybe overly simplified, that a pen test tests the technology, where that pen test tests the defenses, whereas a red team tests the defenders. And the assumed breach sort of allows us to skip that initial phish. Hey, I send this in. Did somebody click on it? And accelerate that a little bit. And we can start the pen test from, on someone's system with some sort of credential.
Okay. And the reason why I brought up phishing is, people ask, about compromises, and, you hear and you read that, still a high percentage of compromises come from social engineering and attacking actual people, not the systems, not the technology, but compromising people. And, I want to really kind of emphasize that it could be anyone, right? Your administrative person to your executive, like anywhere across the board, they can be compromised. And I remember I did a talk at one company, and the next day they got ransomware because one person thought, that wasn't interesting. I didn't really kind of get anything from it. And they clicked on a link to a website because there was a sale. And sure enough, there was a script in the background. It ran and it went through the whole network. And I think it's important, as talking to yourself, is for people that are watching that, if you're not an IT professional, if you're not, cybersecurity, and this is kind of something you do day in and day out, if you're just the general person, you got to keep, aware of what you're clicking on and doing back to practice, because someone like yourself, if you send, some sort of templated email or something through as a, even a pen test you're doing, potentially that can get them access to their network. So, and that's something that's safe. You're doing in a safe environment. But if it's a hacker, you don't know. They're in, and they could be in for a day, a month, a year, doing reconnaissance, surfing around. So, when you're talking about that as being one of the challenges, something I want to kind of emphasize, because even people watching this, I've seen, and I don't know if I've seen IT security professionals get compromised by a phishing attack. Right? There's a conference that comes up. They've been sent that, and all of a sudden they click on it, just not knowing. They're so busy. They're working on 10 different things, and they click on it, and sure enough, the script starts running in the background. And
I think one of the things that we've done poorly in security is we shame those users, right? Right. You hit on this. They're trying to do their job. They're right. trying to get their job done. That they just want to get their job done. They're trying to be efficient with it. And if one person makes the wrong decision, the whole company is taken over. That's a whole different flaw, right? And I think the problem from the security side is we push it onto them. If I say that the users are dumb, they're going to click on stuff, cool. I've done nothing to fix the problem. Right. If I say, hey, someone's going to click on something, Now what can I do? Now I'm taking control and I can make choices. I can make decisions to minimize the impact. Yes, someone at some point will click on something. Let's assume that that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? Can I detect it when they get in, and can I stop them and kick them out if they get in? Right? And we've got to have that. We can't just say, oh, well, the users are dumb and just sort of close our eyes and put our head in the sand. We have to have some sort of defensive depth to say, look, if this does happen, it doesn't take the whole company down with it.
Right. Like, and you're talking about like some sort of endpoint protection and something that can eliminate that machine or that node, immediately. If it's doing something that shouldn't be, it can shut down that node right away. So things like that. And again, companies are looking at, there are tools out there that can do that. It's just, doing the research, working professionals like yourself, right, to, educate on what's out there to be able to implement, proper security or even different things to prevent. Now, going forward with your other challenges, did you have any others other than kind of the, end user, the challenges with, phishing, anything along that line?
I think that piece. I think to go back to it, I think the model for internal pen test needs to change.
Right.
I think we're focusing on the wrong thing, and I hate to say it because some people are going to sort of crucify me for it, but I think we're focusing too much on some of those internal patches. I'm not saying they're not important, but that's not how the first person is getting in. Right? You're not getting in because some server in the middle of your network doesn't have the a specific patch for RDP, right? That will be maybe a later point, but you've got to be able to detect some of that lateral movement, and we've got to be able to focus on some of that detection capability so that when that phish happens, not if, when that happens, we can stop and kick the bad guys out. I mean, we see time and time again from things like the Verizon breach report, for the bad guys are in for months before we detect. And frankly, oftentimes it's not the organization itself that identifies the detection. It might be a credit reporting service that says, hey, you lose a bunch of credit cards, you're breached, and now they have to figure it out.
Right.
Or somebody else finds the breach for them. That's always sort of a sad statistic.
Right.
But we've got to focus much more on detection and work our pen tests to focus on that more as well.
Well, I think you got tools like Darktrace and Vector, which are doing network detection response. And from my understanding, a lot better job because it's more machine learning and AI technology. So it's learning your network and learning the traffic, learning what's going on. So when there does become an alert or something that's irregular on your network, it starts to do that. Because I remember one company that I was talking to, they had a pen test done, and their SIM didn't alert of the actual, traffic and things that were going on, but they were supposed to. And it was all that the filters and everything they had set on that SIM weren't set properly. So all the tools were alerting and alarming, but the SIM wasn't picking it up. So nothing was showing through. So
that was the big one there was the Target breach. They had all of the alerts. Somebody got tired of them and turned them off. So they missed it. But to go back to your point, that is so tremendously key. You've got to have that baseline. You have to know what your network looks like and should look like so that you know when things are different. Because how are you going to detect something going bad in your network if you don't know what good looks like? Right? I was just listening to an episode of Darknet Diaries. There's a guy, I live near Dallas. Tinker runs the DHA over there, and on his episode, he was talking about he got busted because he was using PowerShell on a finance computer.
Okay,
and they caught him not because of anything he did. It's just finance doesn't use PowerShell. They had no fingerprint on his tools. They didn't detect his command and control. They just said, "Look, this is PowerShell. Something's wrong." Okay. And I'm like, that's a great technique. And it's a simple one, right? If PowerShell is run by anyone but IT, we have a problem. Just automatically. Simple detection and things like that. And are they 100%? No. The goal is to make it harder, have enough layers so that the bad guy has to take more time, or we have enough traps in place or that we can identify them more quickly.
Right. I agree. I mean, I remember working at the Ontario government, and they were talking about a scenario where a guy actually had a server underneath his desk, and he was turning it on at, I think, around 7:00 at night, and turning it back off at, when he got back in the office around like 7:30, 8:00. And they were wondering why there was so much network traffic at night. Right. And eventually, over time and distance, they found out that he was running like this pornography site from underneath his desk. And this guy was making money and doing, cash transactions. Well, what happened was he was using the government network to be able to host his server. So, and like,
Wow.
This was years and years ago, but like you said, now, more companies are using these tools to detect network traffic, to detect applications, detect, images, and making sure, the company's image is exactly, if it's the finance department, if it's the HR department, they have certain applications, and that's the only application they have, and the admins have to install their different applications, and they run a scan on that. If something else is not there or is there that shouldn't be,
Yep.
now there's alerts. So all these great things are now being put in place more and more. And I think, like you said, defense in depth is now helping when companies are doing more of this.
Absolutely. Yep. Totally agree.
Now, what do you do like as a pen tester for yourself? I mean, with 10 years experience, how do you keep up to date with what's going on in the industry, different kind of breaches and things that you want to use, compromises that you're looking at as you're testing with companies? How do you keep up to date?
Yeah. I mean, it used to be that Twitter was fantastic for kind of bubbling some of that up. It's sort of, I hate to say it, become kind of a, I don't know, wine fest a little bit.
Okay.
So, I mean, things like Reddit are pretty good because they'll bubble up there. There's a few key people that have good signal to noise ratio on Twitter and some of those other platforms.
Okay.
The social media has helped kind of to propagate some of that. And unfortunately, too, the nice thing is I've got some smart people I work with. We kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And I frankly know enough other people as well where you start to see these discussions, it's sort of a micro social network, if you will, where, hey, have you seen this? What are you looking at over here? I think one of the most valuable things you can get is sort of develop some of that.
Okay.
It's not what I know, it's who I know. The friends I have, especially collectively, are infinitely smarter than I am. So if I can develop some of those friendships, I mean, go to local conferences, hang out with people there. Those people have the same sorts of passions as you, share ideas, ask questions. I mean, I'm sort of honored when people ask me questions about some of the tools that I've written because I'm like, oh, cool. You're actually using this?
Right.
And you would sort of be surprised that many people are really happy to talk about things that they love to do and things that they've done well because someone's interested, right?
Right.
They don't go home and talk to their kids like, here's what I did at work today. It's like, Dad, can you turn on a cartoon?
Right. True. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, now what about like meetup groups and different capture the flags and things like that? Would you recommend those as well?
Oh, absolutely. I used to do a whole bunch of CTFs. Now I don't have the time to do those as much as I would like. I'm fortunate I'm kind of close to Dallas, so it's a little bit of a drive, but I go over there. There's some great meetups in this area. There's probably some all over the place. There's, B-sides, there's like a million of those things.
Right.
I know you hate talking to people. Talk to some of those people, see what they're interested in, see what they're working on. There's different villages. There's also some Slack channels if you're a little bit less interested in poking your head into real people. Like there's the Bloodhound Slack. You can lurk there for a little bit. There's plenty of other ones there where you can get some of that and you'll see kind of the pulse of some of the sharp people. Or the pulse when, hey, multiple people are chatting about this technology, this vulnerability, this defense, whatever it might be.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, the soft side of being in IT and being cybersecurity, do you think that's something people need to work on?
Absolutely. I mean, you're always writing reports. I mean, the level of detail and the extensiveness of the report is drastically different, right? Your average person working inside an organization probably writes fewer reports than we have to. because we're consultants, we have to deliver a report. That's literally the deliverable. So you've got that writing. It never hurts to, be nice to people and understand that human interaction. Talking to people about, hey, can you explain this to me? You don't want to come up and smell bad and be a jerk and those soft skills. I would also encourage people, get out and give talks. One of the great things, Austin, I think, was the first with AHA. Then I can't remember which was next. I think it was Dallas and then Houston. So DHA or DAHA and then Houston, HAHA. Anyways, what they have is they've got events where you go to these things, and they're all run a little bit differently. The nuances don't necessarily matter. But you get up and you talk about what you're working on for about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And you say, hey, this is the cool thing I'm working on. And it could be super cutting edge, or it could be, hey, I'm brand new to the industry. I am just learning about how hashing works. And that's awesome, because there will be someone at your skill level, or someone who doesn't know what you know, because you guaranteed have skills that I don't have. And I would like to think I have skills and expertise that you don't have. And we can both learn from each other. And so many people are scared of going to these things and talking because they're like, well, I don't have anything interesting to say. Yes, you do. Mm-hmm. Talk about what you're seeing in your organization. Take an existing tool or technique and put your spin on it. There's plenty of big names in our industry who literally blog themselves into becoming sort of famous, frankly, using techniques that were already published. Because I don't say it just to disparage that. It's because they put their spin on it. They put themselves out there and said, look, I am learning. Here's how I'm learning. And people identify with that. And that's tremendously valuable. So you do have something to share, whether it be a talk, a blog, whatever. Put it out there and put your spin on it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And one thing I would like to add to that is, learn how to communicate verbally with people, because like you said, cybersecurity people are always in meetings. You're talking to senior level people, you're talking to other IT people. It's kind of like that 360, degree. You're talking to people that are employees to upper management, senior management. So being able to articulate yourself very clear and concise really helps to kind of give you that edge. And I know talking to hiring managers in different companies, they say it's kind of a unicorn to find someone that's very technical, understands, the cybersecurity, the technical aspects of it, but also can communicate in an easy to understand way.
Yep.
So having that soft skill to be able to develop that is very important too, because it's just such an asset, because some people just don't understand. Like, it's way over their head. And sometimes you need to bring it down to something they can get, something they can grasp.
Yeah, completely. And I thought I was good at that, but I keep learning how I wasn't good at that, and I continue to try to get better at it. I mean, I teach a lot with SANS, and I explain something, and I learn, like, hey, here's a simpler way to explain it. I develop that skill set, and you learn how to do that. I mean, there's so many times in security where we're trying to convince someone to take an action from the maybe blue team perspective that is going to make our company more secure. And if you can't communicate that idea and cause them to take the action, I mean, frankly, what's the point, right? You're wasting your breath. And I look at that with our reports. We have a big, huge focus on our reports on not only being a useful report, but frankly, I want to be beautiful too. And it sounds stupid, but you go to a restaurant, you can get the same cut of meat at two different restaurants, but one's got a nice plate and the ambiance, you perceive it as having more value.
Right.
And if you can deliver the same data in a more presentable way, it will be perceived as having more value. Even if it can be the same exact information, that presentation is super important. And if you can develop that skill set, it was tremendously valuable, which means you can make more money, right?
So true. And it's a good point. One of the things that I always remember is when you're working with clients and talking to them is always checking into them, always check in. Did you have any questions about what I just mentioned? Or do you have any questions about that? to make sure they're not just kind of the deer in the headlights, just staring at you going, what? I don't understand. And same with reports is having it in bite size, flow that, there's the overview. They understand what they're getting, right? And then it goes into the meat of the actual kind of the report, and then, kind of a closing of, this is what you just got. Here's just a reminder of some of the actions. Again, it's just to get them in that flow of thinking, because, sometimes when you're dealing with that person across the table, they've got 20 things on their mind, and you just added, 5 more things, and they just can't, grasp it at that moment. But if you put it in a consumable way, easy for them to understand, easy for them to, assimilate it, then it makes it so much easier for them to take action versus. Go ahead.
Just to add to that, it kind of goes to a throwback of a conversation we had as well. I was at an event, and there was a number of people discussing how do you get the business unit to apply the patches, because this gentleman was on the vulnerability management team. He can identify the vulnerabilities, but he's not the one to patch it because it's not his systems, right? And it's separation of duties. I mean, it's frankly the right way to do it,
right?
But somebody else, a woman there, said, what we do is we give them 3. We say, if you can patch these 3 things in the next month, this will have the greatest impact on your risk. And they're like, cool, 3, I got that. Whereas if you give them this giant list, like, I don't know what to do. I've got 300 things on here. Where do I start? Let's look at it next month, which means nothing happens.
Right.
So they is it perfect? Of course it's not. But you're picking the 3 big ones and you're knocking those down. And eventually you're knocking enough of those top tier, those top 3 ones down that you start getting into some of the lower criticality, and you're going to, move that needle.
Yeah, no, for sure. Totally agree with that. And that's kind of that bite side approach, because so many people, and I mean, talk about the, just the people being busy and the burnout and people, and stress leaves and things like that. Just people are overworked, and there's so much they're working on. To give them more tasks when it comes to security, you're coming in, and here's the exciting thing is that you're a penetration tester, you do that, you've got all this great information, you want to provide them great value, and you want to download all this on them. And they can't consume it. They can't take it in. So like you said, giving bite-sized, chunks. And, I know some pen testers, I don't know if your team and your company does this, but sometimes they do follow-ups, and they, we did the pen test, we'll follow up in 90 days, we'll follow up in 6 months, whatever that may be, just to see if you have any questions, anything along that line, is because a lot of times they know the company's overwhelmed when they do that. And it's now such a shock that they need to give them a little bit of time to consume the information and then follow up.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that we do, we got this idea from, I forget who it was, one of my friends, but like in our reports, you got the finding, you've got, what the impact is. But we also give them a way to validate the issue themselves. Okay. So what it allows them to do is, take these findings and then, check themselves. So they apply the patch, they apply the mitigation, whatever it might be, and they can say, okay, is this thing still vulnerable? And they can take this piece of code, they can try these number of steps to test it themselves so that they don't have to necessarily come back. Because oftentimes you're going to deliver the report, it's going to go to one person on the security team, and that person is going to chop it up and hand it out to multiple different engineers who are going to take care of that problem. And then they would maybe have to come back to us, and frankly, retests for pen tests are boring. They're horribly boring, right? Because you're just checking these couple of different points to say, hey, do these things still work? Yes or no. And when it, it's still vulnerable, you're like, oh crap, now I got to test it again. Right. But if you can say, hey, look, here's how you can validate yourself. You hand it off to the engineer attempts to make a fix. They can immediately test it. And if it doesn't work, iterate. And immediately while their brain is switched on that, while they've got the context, they can immediately keep working on that. And then, when it's done, it's done. And also we don't have this window where, you chuck the report over the fence, somebody does the patch, and then we have to wait till everybody gets patches before you call somebody for the retest. And in the meantime, maybe some things are fixed and maybe some things aren't. It allows it to retest, allows them to essentially do the retest themselves and make things, much, much more efficient.
Right.
And I hate doing retests.
Well, I mean, the one thing that, to add on to that, which I've heard is that then you've got you got to schedule change management windows. You got to change, if you're doing a second test, there's change management or windows that are for the testing. And that could be, you're scheduled for 6 months, but it could be 9 months, even 12 months out, because now there's a critical project that needs to be done before they can do the pen test, right? And you have to wait for that done. Now that could be another 90 days, right? Until you can do that. So, no, I completely understand. There's so many different variables after that one test that, pen testers have to work with.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, frankly, I've had somebody tell me it's like, you could resell a retest. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to. And frankly, it makes their life easier. Like I've had clients who's like, hey, do you want to do a retest? I'm like, let me tell you a little thing here so that we don't have to. And they're like, oh, cool. We won't buy a retest then. I'm like, all right, good. Because I like money, but I hate retests.
Well, I think the other thing on the top of this that some people might not know is that certain companies, depending on their industry, have to do it for compliance, right? They have to have a vulnerability and a pen test, maybe annually for compliance for their, industry, for its, say, for example, it's financial or health, anything along that line. Maybe it's industrial. They have to have pen tests done, and some companies have to have it by different companies. Right? It can't be the same company each time. It has to be a different company because they have to validate their security as well as for their insurance too. Right? Their insurance has to say, look, they've done these steps in this fiscal year to make sure they're secure. So some that people that are listening to this, just understand that there's all different facets that a pen testing team has to understand when it comes to it, because it could be you might be retesting with a company because of compliance reasons. It might not just because of vulnerabilities or compromises. It might be because they need a certification saying they've got a pen test done.
Yeah, and we see, the certification, I think by and large has moved things forward, but we still see a lot of organizations who just want that checkbox.
Right.
We had a phone call with somebody a couple months ago, and it was like, okay, my first question is always, what data or process, if lost, stolen, compromised, would cause the biggest pain to your organization? Because I want to know, because that literally frames the rest of the discussion, right? Because the goal of the pen test is to model the real world bad guy. And the real world bad guy is going to be after information that's important to them and information that's important to you, because those are, usually very tightly linked.
Okay.
And the guy,
now, question:
what about
financial? What about financial profit for them? It might not be valuable for the company, but it might be profitable for the actual hacker.
Well, I don't know a case where if they lost that it wouldn't either have financial impact, either by fines or a direct impact.
Okay, because I was thinking say user information, right? It might not be financially, it might not be the company's, I'll say a social network, right? It's not a big thing if they lost the people's information, address, phone number, things like that. But
in that case, it'd be a brand impact and the breach notification. That's a different kind of pain, right?
Right.
Yeah. So whatever it might be, I want to understand some of the basics, and because I can guess what's important to them, right? Credit card numbers, that's easy. But I don't want to guess and be wrong. I hate being wrong. So I would and I usually preface the question with that. Look, I asked this question because I hate being wrong. And I would rather ask you than be wrong. And I don't want to assume, so what data, blah, 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 credit cards. Okay, cool, done. Right? Because there was one test where we had that, where if I would have assumed, I would have been completely wrong, and I would have missed the keys to the kingdom along the way. It's kind of a long story, so I'll skip it. But essentially, it was I'll go into it briefly. It was like a Amazon type thing, but for tools.
Okay.
And I asked hey, what's important to you? And because I'm thinking, customer information, billing information, all those things. They're like, it's actually the price at which we sell things. I was like, what? It's on the internet, man. And they told me like, no, if a competitor were able to get our pricing information, they would just sell everything for a penny less and we'd be out of business. And they talk through some of the defenses there. But because of that, I never want to assume what the big impact is because I don't want to be wrong. So anyways, I asked this guy up front because it helps me frame the entire conversation around what's important here is your organization and your business. It's not me getting to domain admin because that domain, that privileged access is a tool. It's not a destination. And I always want to sort of recenter myself, but also understand. And this guy said it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, I mean, it does. He's like, it's just a pen test. I'm like, I mean, yeah, but kind of not. I mean, we need to understand what's important to you so that we can frame the vulnerabilities in that context. Anyways, he kept going on and on. It's like all pen tests are the same. It doesn't matter. I'm like, well, we're kind of a boutique vendor. We kind of do the more high-end type stuff. He's like, I don't care. I don't want the Porsche. I want the Yugo. And I'm like, all right, if we are not priced in that area and you have a nice day, if you have any questions, please call us back. We essentially fired that guy because he just wanted the checkbox. That's all he cared about was checking that box for compliance reasons, not because it actually mattered.
Right.
And it's kind of sad. And they're hiring somebody, super cheap to come in with whatever vulnerability scanning tool and then call that a pen test. It's not a dig on a tool because it's just somebody using it wrong, right?
And the request from the company not understanding.
Yeah.
Right? Because let's talk about that just kind of briefly. If they got breached and they kind of presented a vulnerability scan and the insurance company audited them and said, well, did you actually, validate that these are compromised and all that? They could be basically hung out to dry. Their claim could be refused. Right? And I know that because I work with insurance companies and watch them refuse claims.
Yeah, but they get a crappy, it's that RCPT that I talked about before, where they, it's a pen test in air quotes, but it's just a vulnerability scan where they may or may not do some additional validation, but they call it a pen test anyway. So on the piece of paper, that box is checked. But yeah, it does get squirrely, but it's a waste of time at that point.
Right. And that's what I agree with you. And that's what I'm saying. If anyone's listening to that and thinking that, okay, yeah, that's a way to get that check mark, be very careful because if you're transferring the liability to insurance, that your insurance that you're paying $100,000, if not more, to your cybersecurity insurance, they might not cover that if you get a breach or ransomware because you didn't do your due diligence. And a lot of times they have a checklist that you have to go through, things that you need to do for your security, posture. And if you're not doing that, and all of a sudden you make a claim saying, hey, look, we got ransomware, we need to make a claim to recover and do all these different things. They might come back and say, nope, sorry, you didn't do your due diligence, right? And your due care that we expected, and that's what you signed up this policy. So just make sure you're working with someone like Tim that understands and give you advice on what you need as a proper test.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now I have one last question for you. Now,
sure.
If you were going to go back,
you're rubbing your hands together. What kind of question is this?
I'm excited
level
about this
of excitement.
It is. I'm really excited about this one because I get a lot of new people asking me, what should I do? Or what mistakes that have I learned being in the industry? And, you being in 10 years, if you could go back to your younger self 10 years ago, what would you recommend? What are some tips you would give yourself, your 10-year younger person? Would it be different education, different strategies? Yeah,
no, mine would be, and it's something I hit on earlier, and it was actually, I was fortunate enough, John Strand is a dear friend of mine. And he had this conversation with me. Like I wanted to give presentations. It was just something I wanted to do. I wanted to do talks, and I didn't want to give the talks because they weren't, cutting edge enough. And John came to me and he's like, look, there are tons of people here at this event that are trying to learn the basics. In fact, look around here. How many people, percentage-wise, do you think are, the absolute wizard versus someone who's just trying to learn? And I was like, I don't know, maybe 99 to 100. He's like, yeah. So which talk do you need to give? The one that talks to this one dude, or the one that talks to everybody else? I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So it helped me sort of understand, like, look, I have some knowledge that other people don't have. And I remember giving that first talk, I'm like, oh man, this is way too low level. And then people come up to me afterwards like, oh, thank you. I didn't know anything about this. And I was like, people actually got something from this. And the other fear sort of associated with that is I had a fear that one sort of wizard was going to come up and be like, you knucklehead, I can't believe this is so stupid. That doesn't happen.
All right.
Like, I've had some of the nicest people in the industry when I was first starting out with some of that come up to me and say, hey, nice talk. And I was like, I know this dude knows all about it because I referenced his material or her material in my talk, and they're happy about it. So, the people who need it, they're happy. And frankly, if they don't need it, they won't come to your talk.
Right.
And no one else is going to come up to you and talk bad about it. In fact, frankly, if they do, screw them. They're a waste of space. But get out there and put yourself out there, whether it be that local conference, blogs, whatever it might be. My favorite thing to point to is Peter Van Eckhout, Conan Coder. He has a series of blog posts on writing exploits for Windows. And it was literally, at least from my understanding, it was him learning. And he just put the blog posts on how to do these things. And they weren't new to him. It was just his process. And he actually now has turned that into, successful consulting practice and successful training just by explaining what he was learning.
Wow.
And when you explain something to someone else, whether it be a blog or the presentation, you learn it better yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I would implore you to get out there and put yourself out there. Go to your local con, give a talk. If you're scared of giving talks, I'll be honest with you, your first talk, as the presentation perspective, is going to suck because everybody's does.
Right.
That's the matter of fact. Get over that, and the next one's going to suck less, and the next one's going to suck less, and eventually you're going to be good at it.
Right.
But just go out there knowing people need that information. And your first presentation, you're not going to be Tony Robbins on stage.
Right.
You're going to get better at that presentation, and people need it.
And I think one thing to add to that, which I totally agree, get out there. If public speaking is a fear of yours, I mean, if it truly is one of those, top 5 fears that, public speaking, you'd rather run naked into a shopping mall than go public speaking, then find another medium. Like, if you write articles, if you want to do even just audio where, it's podcasts, like whatever that medium is, find that medium that you're comfortable and just get out there and do it. Because I totally agree with you, Tim. It's about getting out there. It's about practicing your craft. And I think what happens is you learn by doing it because you do the research. You want to write better articles. You want to do that, and you evolve as you're doing it, and you polish that skill. And also now it's like, oh my God. And then like, not even just the soft skill, but the technical skill, because as you're learning and you're testing it and you're trying to see if it works, you learn it. And now you write about it. So you're really engaging that, memory and the recall of it. So it's just a great way to learn information too. So talks, presentations, if you write articles, if you do audio, you do YouTube, whatever that may be, just get out there.
Yeah. And everyone is nervous the first time. I mean, if you're not, awesome. My first talk, I was walking to the car to drive away so I wouldn't have to do it. Not even kidding. Like, I was going to leave. One of my first talks, it was supposed to be a 60-minute talk. I talked so fast, I finished it in 17 minutes. Like, I couldn't slow down. I knew I was talking fast. I couldn't stop myself.
Right.
Okay. And I don't tell you that to scare you. Look, my first talks didn't necessarily go well. I learned from that, and now I am super comfortable jumping up in front of a large room, and I am so thrilled that I did that. And it was such a rewarding experience. And again, if that's not your medium, cool, but you're probably going to have some sort of worry if it's blogging or whatever. Put yourself out there. Who cares? Turn the comments off. Never read the comments. Everyone's always told me never read the comments.
Right.
But just put yourself out there.
And I think that is that right for the trash bin. I think that was one I learned. Do things for the trash bin, like whatever that may be, and just go look, I'm going to go and fail miserably. I'm going to fail, amazingly to this talk or this podcast or this, blog or whatever. It's going to be terrible. That's great. I'm just going to have fun doing it. And it only matters for me. And then do 10 of those and do 50 of those. And all of a sudden you'll realize after the first, 10 or 15, you'll start improving because you want to make it a little bit better for you. And it is just for you. And then after your first, 20 or 30, you start to get it. Then you start kind of going, oh, I like doing this and I enjoy that. And then you'll start to improve. Like you said, with talks and presentations, you get there. And once you kind of get there, you get the nerves out. I know when I started doing talks and presentations, even being on TV, Rogers TV here, you got 3 cameras there. You got a producer there. You got, the camera guy staring. You got the mic person with the boom mic on you. And you got your mic on you and you're sitting going, oh my God, like what am I? And then all of a sudden they go and the red light goes on and you're like, oh, what do we do? What do I say?
Yeah.
And they go, so I'm introducing Brandon. You're like, who's Brandon? Who's he? When's he coming in? They're like, it's you. And you're like, oh, and then you got to talk, right? And you're just like deer in the headlights. You're doing that. But like you said, you get kind of comfortable, you get in the flow and you start doing it. And then now it becomes second nature. You don't really worry about the cameras. You don't really worry about the audience. You just kind of do your thing, right? And you enjoy it. So I totally agree with you, Tim. It's just about getting out there and just doing it and doing it for yourself.
Yep. And for me personally, it gives me an incentive to do the additional research. I learn so much beyond just developing my own presentation skills. It gives me a reason to learn, and then I can share. And I always I try to put my spin on it, because if you're in the audience, I want to see why it matters to you. Because if I can see that it matters to you, your passion comes through. And that makes it interesting, right? Put your spin on it. Tell your story, right?
No, I agree. And practice. I mean, one of the things that I was part of Toastmasters and in different groups like that, where they teach you how to speak, was one is practice your speech, practice your writing, do that. Like if you're going to do a talk, practice it, like time yourselves, and then actually relive it. Like stand up, get up there, time yourself, do all that, get yourself in that scenario, in that physical action. And then what happens is, like you did, like for example, I've done that myself, where you time yourself for 60 minutes and then all of a sudden it ends up being, half an hour, 20 minutes. And I did that myself, because you just go and you expect breaks and pauses, but you don't break and you don't pause, and it just cuts down the time. So now you have a Q&A that's 30 minutes long, right? Because you're actually slotted for 60 minutes. So you're sitting there kind of going, okay, does anyone else have any questions? I know the worst one for me was when I did that, no one had any questions. So like, what do I do? Do I add more?
Yeah, but I mean, so if it's a conference talk, I don't think anyone's ever offended if you let them go early.
Oh, right? No. But if you're
if you add extra fluff for the sake of adding the fluff, people will murder you. So I mean, exactly. don't be too afraid about not having enough necessarily content. And frankly, you might go too fast. I did. It was not great. But you also learn how you fail. Like, right. And find people around you that can tell you when you fail and how you fail. Like it was doing like a murder board with, like, once again, John Strand. And he's like, look, I just broke you. I'm like, what? He's like, I know the material. It's like, yes, you absolutely know that material. In fact, I had no idea what you're talking about, because you know way more about it than I do. But you started talking faster and faster and faster, and you lost all of us. And I'm like, and now I know how I break. Right. Like, I don't know how to stop that. Bring some water with you on stage. Take that water and drink it. I saw there was the comedy show this summer with like Jeff Foxworthy and a few other people. Okay. And he had a great quote that he was talking about, specifically comedy, but he said, if you think you're going too slow, go slower. Yeah. And I find myself, I'm a fast talker, but it gives people more time to digest. Those pauses, just make yourself slow down and be aware and go for those pauses, give people time and sort of develop that skill.
If you ever have to read, and I don't know if you've ever done this, if you've ever had to read a teleprompter and to get somebody to teach you to do it, it seems like you're talking so slow.
I've never done it.
So one of the things I had to do for Rogers TV, they actually had a teleprompter you had to read from. So I actually had to go through training of how to read a teleprompter correctly and learning different words I cannot say on TV. So for example, businesses I can't say on TV because the S is slur. I have to say companies. So and anytime I say that, because the audio picks up, it picks up.
And it's you specifically. It's not
just me. So you have to learn that. So as you're reading, you read and they'll go, no, you can't say that. We have to change that word. And it has to be companies now. And you can't say this, you can't that. And you have to take a pause. And you see them all do it. And then when you read it, it's like you said, it feels so slow and you have to pronunciate. So today we're going to talk about companies. And you're like, oh my God, this is so slow. Let's go. But it's this slow pace and how you emphasize your words so it picks up clear on the audio. So then you learn that when you're doing talks and presentations that you slow down, you emphasize things. So today we're going to talk about compromises, right? You change your tone, right? And you get people more engaged. And I think, the one reason why I'm adding this to people that are doing public speaking is because you get people engaged when you change your tone and you change your speed, right? As soon as you can do that, you actually get people kind of going and they're like the cliffhangers. So today we're going to talk about compromises. And people go, okay, compromise, let's go. Because their mind's going so fast.
Yep.
We're going to talk about this type of breach. And it's really exciting that we're going to talk about this breach. And you hear people like Tony Robbins and all that, they do it constantly where they'll go quiet and soft and whisper and then go really loud. And you're kind of like, you feel at the end of the, his presentation, you're all jazzed, but it's again, how they're delivering it.
Yep. Yeah, so, I find myself, it's funny. I find myself watching presenters present oftentimes more than their words sometimes. Like if I find a topic to be less interesting, assuming you're like a seasoned presenter, I'm like, just watch their mannerisms and how they talk and the pauses and exactly like you said, tones.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to pick up on that companies versus businesses because that's a word I have a problem with too. So that's funny.
So yeah, it was just one of those things that they got me to write out my script and then they got me to read it and then listen back. And I was like, and they were saying like, as they were doing it, they were like, through the script, they're Xing things out. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can't believe I'm saying that. And so now me doing podcasts and working with people, I pick up things like that as well, because you're looking for it. You're listening for these words that you shouldn't be saying. And you listen if other people say them and say them, if they say them correctly, or do they slur as well? So it's kind of fun. But when you learn that, you become very clear in your grammar and how you're delivering things.
And then to add to that too, when you slow down, it gives you more time to get ahead of yourself, so that you don't get into like if I go too fast, I double think myself and I'll try to change up my sentence halfway through, or I'll like stutter on a word. And it helps with my delivery on multiple layers because I can get ahead of myself and I can use the right words and say those words that I can say and not the words that I can't say, kind of a thing.
Right.
But and frankly, it's more interesting too, right? Take it nice and easy, and you'll be fine in the presentation.
And I think one kind of thing I want to add on to that is that just remember for professional speakers, practice their speech and do it 10 to 20 to 30 different times in different venues until they polish it up. You see comedians do that. And I know I was watching Kevin Hart's Netflix special, but he did it in different comedy clubs before he did his Netflix special, and he kept adjusting it and making it kind of, okay, I got to fix that. Okay, that didn't kind of hit. And same thing when we're doing on kind of our talks and presentations, same thing as you're kind of working on polishing that up. Do that one talk like 20 different times and 20 different events and venues and all that. You don't need to switch it up each time. You don't need to be fresh in the sense of new topic each time. You can have that one topic and speak about it at 10 different venues,
Yeah. Absolutely, because you're going to have different audiences at each. I know a lot of people who think that once I give a talk, once it's done. No. You're going to have different people at those different events, and the overlap is going to be minimal. And frankly, if they've seen yours, they probably won't go again. Or even better, they saw it and they're like, I want to hear that again because I need it, right? So don't hesitate to do it again. Do it multiple times.
Yeah, because it'll just help you to polish. Because if you know the material, the more you can work on other aspects of the delivery. You know, your timing, your speed, and everything else. Because now you know the material, you know it hits. Okay, but how do I change it? How do I make it better for myself? You know, I found I was a little fast because you're going to critique yourself, and then you all of a sudden now become better. So awesome.
Listening to yourself is so painful. Listening to your own audio, everybody hates it. It's awful, but do it. I learned when I did it. I do it like once a year now. I learned I said a lot.
Okay.
And I worked really, really hard. And then somehow years later, I picked up saying right at the end of every sentence. And
right. Just said it now. There you go.
Nice.
Exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No. Thank you again for having me. If you've got questions, feel free to drop me an email, tim@redsiege.com, or hit me up on Twitter with a name you probably can't spell. So just send me an email.
Well, yeah, I mean, and check out his website as well. I'm just going to say it here. It is
redsiege.com.
Yeah, check it out. If you guys have any questions about having your company do like a pen test or anything along that line, send them a message. Tim's really good on the sense of like what you heard in this podcast of educating you on what you need and then going through the process as well and then delivery. So, Tim, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Appreciate it. Thank you again for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, guys, I just want to add one more thing. Don't forget, again, to follow Tim on his social sites. Again, a lot of great information. So you can actually see some YouTube videos too of Tim doing interviews and other podcasts. And just make sure you subscribe to the Daily Cyber because there's, again, a lot of great interviews with like people like Tim and experts in the field about cybersecurity and what's going on. And I just want to finish off this podcast saying, don't forget, software is hackable, being connected vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Podcast.